So over the last couple days, I've been making so many holograms, it's gonna make you sick, and today I thought I would share with you how I make a hologram. I realized I was looking to the side, whereas the camera is here. So, we're gonna make a hologram using my library called S.H.I.T, which stands for Sci-Fi Hologram Interface Templates, and it's used to just mishmash, there's a word, kit bash, holograms together. So let me show you how it works. Link in the description, but check it out, see if this is something you're interested in, and hologram time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the asset browser and load the S.H.I.T library, which is anything from that. And basically this is 27 templates that are completely procedural that let you make a hologram. So let me show you the approach that I use to make something that looks good. So the first thing I use is the panel generator, which is in the background because it's one of the building blocks. And I'm just going to drop it in. And generally I look at things from the top view because I render them as a 2D layer at the end. So I don't use the three-dimensional stuff that much. But I'll show you how to do it anyways. So with the panel generator and with everything else, you always go into the modifiers and you start playing with it. So you can see the seed just gives you different panels. So I actually like the look of this one. You can control the bevel, you can control kind of the size of it. Let's go for a long panel for this one, and I'm happy with that. Also, let's add a background, because right now it's just gray. We have a couple options. I like the hexagon one the most, so this is a procedural material. So everything here is either a procedural geometry nodes thing or a material mesh or shader. To get this to be as clean as possible, we're going to run cycles, although it's compatible in both. And you can see that this hexagon is nice and animated, but it's not covering this area or this area. So let's fix that. To do it, I'm just going to scale it up, and I know what you're thinking. Genius. But it has a hexagons kind of outside of the panel, which is not what we want. So to fix this, in edit mode, I'm going to use the knife tool and just quickly do this. And I know, bad topology, but it doesn't matter. We're just making holograms. And the idea of kit bashing is getting to the end result as fast as possible. So I'm going to invert the selection, delete the faces, and now we only have hexagons inside of here. Like I said, everything can be either controlled from the modifier, right? Or it can be controlled from the shading workspace. So in the case of this hexagon material, we can control kind of the density of it. So I want to bring the density up to something like that. And we can control the animation and all that. So if it feels like it's flickering too fast, I increase the speed paradoxically because it's a division. That will make it slower. But I kind of like it going fast. Do I want to fade it in and out? Do I want it to kind of take up the whole panel? Or can I have a fade to it? Up to you. And you can also play with kind of the line thickness and stuff like that. But I think I'm happy with that. So this is going to be the base. And again, if you want it to be 3D, three-dimensionally accurate, you can take these layers and like position them where you want them. But I'm just going to render them from the top. Now let's get a main element in here. Actually, one more thing that we can do, since this is a material, we can always add on to it. If you want to make it kind of more faint, there's no reason we can't like mix a transparent BSDF, right? This is fully modular. So I'm going to do something like that, make it a bit more transparent. And now I want to add a main focal element. Okay, so this can be either a 3D object. So these 3D objects like the DNA, they're great as a kind of main focus point. Another option is you go into the complex shaders and we have stuff like sonar, which is another, you might want to move that up. It's another completely procedural shader. So you kind of want to pick what element you want as a focus point. I think for this one, I'm actually going to go with a three-dimensional one. So we are going to make this kind of a 3D thing. So with our DNA, I'm just going to kind of position it in the middle here, push it up, and I guess scale it down. So we kind of have this hologram panel that's going to show DNA stuff. And by the way, we can always mess with the material later. By default, it's set to just this white. But in the shading, all these objects you drag in that are geometry nodes based are going to be based on this hologram material. That should just be as easy as swapping the color. And now you have like a blue hologram, whatever. Or again, I'm trying to keep this as open as possible. You can also run this through a principled BSDF, and this principled BSDF lets you do cool stuff, like you can run this through a Fresnel for the emission strength and make the emission white, and now that gives it a bit more dimension. Again, completely up to you. So I'm going to have this DNA element, and you want it to feel like it's centered, like it's intentionally placed there. So I'm going to use one of the circular elements. These are the ones that have a stupid amount of control. So I'm going to start off with this dashed element, although we probably want to put it off to the side and kind of center it on this DNA. And basically what most of these circular elements do is they spin with some kind of details that you add in. So I'm going to have this slightly hover above the panel. By the way, we should probably save. Somebody left a comment that I'm flexing on them by never saving. We'll call this a shit project, because sci-fi hologram interface templates. What else could shit be? And I'm so happy. So many people have already bought my shit. I'm happy with that. So let's use the circular dashed, which lets you control kind of the radius, which whatever, you can scale it up and down, it doesn't matter. But these are the settings I'm interested in. So the band mask, you can see there's 5 sections here. That's because there's 5 bands. If I made it 3, there would be 3, etc. So I'm going to use 3 bands. I'm actually going to do a trick where I'm going to take the size and bring it above 1, which is kind of a little secret of mine. It lets you have these long bands and then these tiny ones as well. So something like that. I'm going to make a duplicate, scale it up. I'm going to have a band mask of 2, and I'm going to bring the size down, so we literally just have 2 bands. I'm going to make it thinner, and I'm going to make it spin 3 times as fast. And now we have a bit of motivation for our element, and let's raise some pieces here. Duplicate, scale it down. This can be the one with a bunch of dashes, so 100 dashes, no band mask, and low size. And low thickness as well. Divide that by 4. Just making sure that every element feels properly motivated. By the way, you can do something fancy with the DNA where, like, I think height is the one that generates it, yeah. So we could have it start at a height of 0 and then kind of fade into existence over 30 frames. Because you can keyframe any of this. So now we have something that looks like that. Up to you what you want to do with it. And again, you can control the bands, everything about the DNA. If anything, I feel like this DNA is a bit too dense for the scene, so I'm just going to bring it down to 15. Okay, next is I just want to add some random shit, literally, that will make it look more interesting. So I'm going to add some blinking elements. These are just fast ways to get detail out of nowhere. So I'm going to add these blinking circles, which uses a kind of a snake path finding algorithm that I made to do that. So I'm just going to put that in the corner here and in the corner here. I'm doing it in opposite corners so it feels like properly motivated. Bring those elements down. This one's a bit 3D. As it pops in and out, there's different heights, which again doesn't matter if you're going from the top view, but if you want that 3D-ness, that's a good way to get it. And with these blinking lights, I'm going to change the behavior of the second one so they're not doing literally the same thing. And I'm going to bring down the speed so they look more independent from each other. Other things, just quick blinking elements. You have a bunch of kind of like circular elements, and these are meant to be small. They're not meant to be super detailed or anything. So I'm going to add one in this corner here. And speaking of circular elements, let's also add this circle wiggle, which kind of looks like a little radar thing. So add that there. I'm going to make a copy. And let's add another copy of our, what did I call this, blinking circle single with a different seed, so it looks a bit different. Oh, by the way, these are completely synced up, so change the seed. So all of these can be kind of independent from each other. And just like last time, bring these elements down if that's something you care about. Okay, do I want to add any more blinking details? I'll add one more. I really like this arrow effect. You can have as many arrows as you want, kind of like a racetrack it kind of looks like. What I like to do is I like to make this a very high number, so it's going to make a lot of arrows. And I like to make it super small, kind of rotate it 90 degrees, and put it somewhere down here. In fact, we could even go crazy, make it like 20. So I'm going to see where it's fully done all the arrows, and then position it like that. We have that, and again, with all these elements, you can properly motivate them. So for example, I can make a cell element that has a dashed square, and I'm just going to make kind of a boundary. So you can play around with a lot of these. Every single element can be turned into like 50 different things because of, like, look at how many sliders this has. So I'm going to increase, by the way, height is like that because I think I rotated it. But I'm just going to properly motivate this, something like that. You can change the speed, number of dashes, but I think that makes it feel more integrated. Okay, now we should probably, you could add more blinking elements and get really detailed here. Now I think we should add some kind of medium scale element. So our DNA is a large scale element, by the way. Always do this 3D. This is much easier to do if you only care about the 2D kind of render of it, which kind of makes sense because then you don't render motion blur or anything. But let's go for medium scale details, and that's where I like to go to the actually the cells, because there's a couple of kind of medium scale details that this provides. The main one, and this one's crazy powerful, the circuit, which just has a bunch of contracting lines. But here's a trick with it. So you make it super thin, you bring down the resolution so that there's only a couple lines, you increase the size, so I'm kind of taking up the top of this panel right here, and you get these like bars for free. It does feel like they're moving a bit too fast though, so I just added a bit more resolution. So you get these bars that make it look like there's complex action going on, etc. You can change the contraction behavior, like do they contract all the way or part of the way based on a random function. You can change the seed until you get something that you like the look of. I actually like the first one. And speaking of kind of like linear elements, you can also add some graphs. So I'm just kind of making a project that intentionally goes through kind of all the options. Do I want a graph slider? No, I like this one because it has a number that maybe we should put it right below the DNA. Got a text message. Hopefully that doesn't mess with the recording. I like to put it right next to an element that feels like it motivates it. So something like that. Couple final elements, since I don't want this to be too long, since this is just a kit bashing kind of thing. I want to motivate this DNA even more, and there's a great element for that. It's called Shrinking Text Circle. Didn't know what to call it, so that's what we're calling it. And this is another shader element, which you can see it kind of has these circles that contract towards the center. And I'm just going to properly motivate that. And that just makes it feel like there's energy leaking into the DNA and stuff like that. Final elements before we wrap up here, we can just add some cells that do various things. So I'm going to make a duplicate here. For this one, I'm going to change the speed so they're not exactly synced up. These are just kind of like, I call them like power cells in my mind. They rotate, they do a thing. But I don't want to get too complicated at this point. I think I'm pretty happy with the way this is looking. Okay. So here we have, and I keep getting a message from Uber. They gotta fucking chill. Here we have a hologram element. I want to show you how to do some basic compositing, because this isn't the end. This is just like how you make the thing. The way you make it look good is with compositing. So first of all, I'm going to increase kind of the strength of this Fresnel effect, but keep it kind of on the boundaries. So here we have the thing. Let's render it. So from the camera view, which would be helpful if we had a camera, what I'm going to do, I know I just went deep voice on you, I just realized I was going high-pitched voice. I'm going to pick an angle that looks good. Perfect trick for holograms is always go orthographic. It just kind of looks cool. And then you can zoom in, position your view and your element and all that, and add depth of field centered on the center element, which is DNA. You want some stuff to be out of focus. It looks cool. Okay, background, make it either black or just a tiny bit gray, and I think I'm happy with that. So now, here's our hologram. Super simple. This is one of the ones that I made as a demo. I'm just going to change some render settings, and we want to render one frame so that we can do our compositing. And it renders pretty fast. By the way, almost all of this, like 95% of this, is compatible with Eevee. And it's 100% compatible with Eevee. It's just that that last 5% benefits from cycles. I think everything should technically work. Okay. My shit works. I don't know how else to put it. So here we have a render. Let's make it look good. First thing you might be tempted to do is add a glare node, just to add in those details, and that's fine. But I think the best way to add in kind of a blur that makes it look hologrammy is a directional blur, which seems like a weird move, but follow along. So what you want to do is you want to bump the distance. I'm going to make it negative. I'm going to make a couple iterations so it doesn't feel so choppy. And I'm going to rotate this by 90 degrees. So now this directional blur is going vertically. And you're thinking, this looks horrible. What are you thinking? The idea is you mix this over the glare using an addition, and that kind of makes it feel like there's a projection going upwards or downwards. So when this is set to 0, we don't have any of that. And as we increase it a little, it's just going to add that kind of directional blur, and you can increase or decrease the length of that. That's just going to make it feel more like a hologram, okay? Other things you can do is you could do the color in the material. I prefer to do it here in compositing because you can just multiply since it's a black and white image and be like, oh, I want it to be kind of a bluish hologram. And you can see already this looks sick. Other things you can do, this is just basic workflow. Lens distortion, you want to add a good amount of it, especially if it's like supposed to be a tiny element. You want a lot of chromatic aberration on the fringes. You could add a vignette, stuff like this. I find that another icing on the cake is you throw a filter, set it to shadow, which is kind of like sharpness almost. You can see here's before and after. It just adds a stupid amount of detail to this. Makes it look more like a circuit board. I like to go halfway with that. And this is something that's going to apply to all of our renders. And again, we can control kind of the fade on this. We can control the color, easily get different color holograms. Purple is always kind of a cool color. And do something like that. So at this point, you just render the animation, and it will look like this, but blue. So there you go. Link in the description for where you can buy my shit, literally. Thank you so much. All the money goes either to me, the guy who made it, so you can directly support me and get some great shit, in return. Or if I'm doing affiliate marketing stuff, some percentage goes to other people. But I'm going to do more hologram tutorials to show you more of what this is capable of, because I put in like weeks of work into this. So I'm happy that it's done. I'm relieved that it's done. And I'm not going to do a Patreon promotion for this one because I really want to promote my shit. So there you go. Thank you for watching, and hopefully you're going to get something out of it. Thanks for watching.